Good afternoon and welcome to the Expansion of Consciousness. I'm your host, Jason Medlock, and tonight we have a very special guest. But before I even get to that, we're expanding our consciousness once again. We're trying to figure out ways to use different techniques and use different spiritual modalities to improve our lives. Some may be through a coach, some way may be through a spiritual teacher. But the bottom line is, how do we use what we have within? How do we change our lives with coaches? How do we change our lives with meditation? What are the key elements we can use in order to rebuild our relationship, in order to be a better parent? The expansion of consciousness is much more than being in a dream state or being speaking to loved ones that have passed on. It's a lot about how to impact your life in business, how to impact your life in a number of things that you're interested in. So tonight I am very excited to bring on Mr. Robert White. With over 1.3 million graduates from high impact experimental trainings and companies Robert has founded. He's led and he's been there and done that. I mean, literally, Robert is a world-renowned executive coach. Robert has lived and worked abroad in Japan, Hong Kong, Mainland China, a total of 21 years. He's a mentor to executives, serial entrepreneurs, trainers of thousands. He's an author of a bestseller and a public speaker. Robert's first 8 years of his career was in radio, so he knows how to make a host look good and sound good. Without any further ado, we're going to bring on Mr. White, and I am so glad to have him on our show today.
Jason,
hello, Robert. Hey there.
I'm delighted to be with you. You know, sometimes at this age, when I hear those introductions, I can't wait to hear what I have to say. You know,
I know. And it's just I'm so happy that you decided to come on the show. And I always say this. People ask, well, why do you bring a lot of coaches on the show? You're a coach. Because coaching is not for everyone and every person in for you. I want to give the audience a variety of different people in different styles, different backgrounds, and different levels of experience so that they may resonate with one particular person or whoever. I've had several coaches on the show, so I'm glad that you took the opportunity to come on and share your experience, share your knowledge with our guests.
Well, Jason, I am not a spiritual teacher nor a spiritual coach. I don't do what you do. Yeah. I'm a student in that area and a happy one.
Absolutely. I mean, your background is so interesting. I'm gonna let you talk about it, and I know that you've taken yourself to high levels of success, only see it to crumble, and you rebuilt yourself once again. Being in Green Bay, not coming from a lot of wealth, and you only had a semester of college, and you ended up retiring at the age of 46. Tell us about how it started for you, the ups and downs, and what brought you to coaching.
Well, you kind of hinted at it, Jason, in that I did start out with poverty and abuse, frankly. My mother had a lot of children, yet didn't seem to like them very much. Yes. So there was a lot of violence in our home. But from the beginning, I think, because I've done a lot of work with clients around purpose, that just really discovering and living in alignment with your purpose is of great value. So, of course, I've done it on myself. I worked on me in that regard. And so my first purpose was I'll never be poor again. That's a kind of a negative purpose, but it motivated me and it caused a lot of accomplishment. So as a high schooler, I was named most likely to succeed, mostly because I had spent at that time 3 years on the air with radio, and so all of my fellow students knew who I was.
Okay.
I don't know that it was just a popularity contest, and they named me most likely to succeed. And I spent the next 10 years making them wrong. I had a teenage marriage and divorce and felt horribly guilty about it. I had 3 heart attacks at 19, 21, and 23.
Wow.
And had been told I wouldn't live past 35. And my little business was failing. And one of my friends leaned on me for about 6 months to get me to attend one of the early human potential movement trainings. And to use some language that you and I think your audience would be familiar with, the heart of that training, even though I didn't understand it at the time, was 16 approximately 30 to 40 minute guided meditations. Very structured, word for word, by a genius. And but I didn't know all of that. I just knew that my friends went to the training, their life got better, so okay, I'll go. And it sounds like a cliche all these years later, but my life changed for the better. They didn't mention one word about money in that 4-day program, and yet I tripled my income in the year following that training, and it went up 10 times the second year. And something that it's not in my bio, and you'll know why as the moment I tell you this. The chest pain went away after 30 days. I did the little exercise. I healed myself. So the condition that I had, the heart condition that I had, was inoperable, and nobody knew what to do about it. But whether you say God knew or the universe knew or the stars knew, make up what you want. I did that little 20-minute exercise twice a day for about a month. And there was no flash of light. There was no great realization. The chest pain just went away. And stayed away until some 20 years later. For a brief period of time, it came back. And I did the 20 minutes in the morning and the 20 minutes of meditation at night, and it went away again. So I can pass an insurance physical today. That's not something I don't talk to people either about the cure, whatever it was, or my current status. But that's been a big part of my life. It changed everything for me. It changed how I saw myself. I no longer saw myself with a time limit on my life, beyond the kind of normal thing that happens to all of us in the circle of life. It didn't dominate my life anymore. So it made those little 20-minute sessions twice a day changed my life in a really major way. I ended up being president of that company as a hired gun.
Wow.
I had enrolled a lot of people in it because I believed in its effectiveness. They heard about me because I was bringing them a lot of business. And I went out and met with the founder, Alexander Everett. I didn't even know his name before he called me. I didn't care. I didn't care about the company, or it was just something that worked in my life. And then friends, family, my sales force, and they went through it. They all came back and their lives got better. So I was a believer. And so enrolling people in that was not a business, even though it helped my business to have those people around me that were graduates. Anyway, I went out and met Alexander. I got to fly first class for the first time. I had never done that, from New York to San Francisco. And 10 days later, I was president of Mind Dynamics. So I ran the business of that business. I had some skills around recruiting and training and managing, leading a company. Alexander was the genius that put it all together. Well, that was his gift. So we made a good partnership for 4 years, and the ownership changed of the company. It no longer worked for me. So I quit, and I founded this company called LifeSpring that ended up in 17 U.S. cities and doing some great work. But I left after 6 months, learned it. You were talking about learning from a failure. That was a failure for me, but a success for the company, that I just quit. I sold my shares to my staff, ended up in Japan, and then the rest of Asia, and built that second company called Arc International, and then retired at 46, and moved to Aspen, Colorado, skied 60 to 80 days a year, remarried, had 2 birth children and 2 adopted special needs kids, traveled for 6 months with the late John Denver, visited 43 countries.
Wow.
Had a great life and lost control of my company. I lost $30 million and a lot of embarrassment in my industry, and went back to work. And what I've discovered is that I really like working with people like me, people that are running a company, running a nonprofit, running a church, and struggling with leadership. And I've succeeded and failed as a leader. I think I've learned a lot from it. My book's become a bestseller, and my life is interesting once again.
You know, you have an interesting life regardless, because that is what Source planned. You planned it before you incarnated, but I want to go back a little bit and just kind of touch on this human potential training that you received. And within that, you mentioned you did a lot of meditation. Isn't that kind of what you're doing right now as an executive coach, showing people their potential, giving them the tools, and setting up programs to help them perform at the highest level? And you mentioned, spiritual teacher, and kind of what we do. I'm a mindset performance coach. It's more of the same thing that actually you do. I just use spiritual modalities as my toolkit to change mindsets and move people in the direction they need to be in. But so this human potential class is a lot of those concepts what you use as an executive coach?
No, they are exactly the same. The key to the work that I've done traditionally, Jason, is that it's experiential. There's a book that was published actually here in Colorado. I don't recommend the book. It's not very well written. It doesn't hold together, but I love the title. The title is "You Don't Learn to Ride a Bicycle from a Book." You get on the bike. There's something about it that looks attractive. Your friends are riding a bike, or you saw somebody riding a bike. So you want to do it. You want that wind in your hair and all of that experience. The freedom of riding a bike, I think, is what calls to people. Yet, you're going from 2 relatively stable feet to 2 wheels that are quite narrow, and it's scary, and you might fall over. And in fact, once you get on the bike, quite often you do fall over and you skin your elbows or your knees or something. And hopefully somebody helps you. Somebody's a coach. But even if they're not, you do it. And the interesting thing about that is, and finally, you can ride a bike. And now you've got all of those benefits. And the interesting thing is that if for whatever reason you don't ride a bike for 10 years, can you still get on it and ride a bike?
Absolutely.
You had an experience. And there's a lot of examples like that about experiential learning. But where you might depend somewhat on the modality of becoming quiet, whatever we call becoming quiet, meditation or prayer or whatever we call it. My go-to modality is an experience. So I work with people on having experiences around things like honesty and self-expression and commitment.
So what is experiential learning? How do you do it?
Well, some of it is done face-to-face in a guided conversation, having people complete a sentence with a partner or with 2 partners, call them a listening triad or a dyad, two people. Some of it is a learning game. An example would be that if we talked about all of your listeners, viewers right now, and we said to people, is it better to play the game of life in a win-win way, or is win-lose okay? A very high percentage of those people would say, "Oh, win-win is better. I don't want to play win-lose." Well, there's 1,300,000 graduates of our programs, and in every one of those programs, we play a game. And in that game, what it reveals is that a very high percentage of people, above 90%, play the game win-lose, even though the instructions are to play win-win.
Right.
So they learn something from that, or they don't, but most of the time they do. They learn that there's a subconscious set of beliefs about abundance, about winning, and that if someone else wins, you're going to lose. There's that whole set of dysfunctional beliefs that we pick up very early in life, and that's the way we play the game of life. So we might, the current term is virtue signaling. We want to puff up our chests and say, "Well, I would never play win-lose," but put us into the heart of the battle about life, and we play win-lose. But without that experience and having it shown, sometimes I like to talk about our work as that we hold the mirror up to people to see their actual behavior as opposed to what they profess to believe. And so that would be an example. It's one thing to talk about the concept of win-lose when it's easy to say, "Oh, I'll always play win-win." But when we put you in this cleverly constructed game, the real you comes out. And the real you quite often is win-lose. And sometimes it's very subtle. It's very hard to notice until you're in the game. And then when we hold that mirror up, it's pretty dramatic.
Wow.
But that would be an example. We play learning games. We do these dyads and triads. We do group activities. We do all these things. We challenge people. We do interactive lectures where people have to respond, and we're dealing with real world. And that's why I like to say we don't teach spirituality, even though energy is everything, and so spirit is everything. We just don't talk about it directly.
Sure.
We've had a lot of religious people that have done our training over the years say something to me like, "Well, I know you didn't mention religion, but I think I have a different relationship with Buddha today than I had before I did the training. I have a different relationship with Christ. I have a different relationship with Muhammad. I have a different relationship with Shiva." That's a very common statement after people do our trainings, and or in my coaching, it's the same thing. People go back to church after. I don't say a word about church. I do say that it's good to have a practice of a place, a methodology to become quiet. I do say that. I don't get any closer.
Robert, although, and you're right, you're absolutely right. And although I'm certified in a number of different modalities, that's not what I use to sell coaching. I don't. I use, let's help you get clear on exactly what you want. Let's then lay out a strategy on how we're going to get there and find out about, your psyche. And are you sleeping well? What are you eating? Things like that. And so it's a plan laid out that doesn't even mention spiritual modalities. But once we start working and I start to introduce to you exactly what I want you to do, then it's like, oh, aha. But I never mentioned religion. We don't even talk about religion on this show, to be honest. Religion is just something different. I don't even get into that topic. But I want to ask you this. I'm just reading your bio and going through a lot of things that you've done over your career. You spent a lot of time in China, Hong Kong. You've been abroad for for more than 20 years, which is pretty unusual for an American. How did that happen for you?
Great question. When I was with Mind Dynamics, I spent the first 2 years there kind of straightening out the U.S. business. And, uh, uh, and then a number of our graduates from long before I joined Mind Dynamics quite often, a number of them worked abroad. Uh, and again, this is America. A very small percentage of people have my background or the background of the people I'm talking about.
Yes.
But we had graduates all over the world. And then Alexander was a magnetic, charismatic, incredibly gifted speaker. And you talk about what you do with your clients or what I do with mine.
Mm-hmm.
I think where spirit and spiritual growth shows up most is how we are being in the coaching role.
Our energy.
Without talking about it, but it's the way we're showing up as a human being, but coming from a little different place.
Say it again, the way you show up. I love it. I love it. You're right.
And so Alexander, before he founded Mind Dynamics, he spent 3 years traveling the world, studying the world's religions and thought mindfulness, basically.
Yes.
He went to India and he went to the Mideast, to Egypt. And he studied with Krishnamurti, all those kind of people. And so that informed who he was being. Even though he wasn't teaching it, it's who he was. And that made him incredibly attractive to audiences. And so he would go around the world and give these talks. And then all of a sudden, everybody wanted us to set up a Mind Dynamics training in their country. So the last 2 years of my service with Mind Dynamics, that's what I did. I set up 7 subsidiary companies to Mind Dynamics in Europe and Australia. The one country that I said no to, ironically, was Japan. We're doing large group trainings. We need space. It's the most expensive thing in Japan because they have so little of it. And other expenses were very high. We were very busy. Oh, and the language is backwards. And the Mind Dynamics training was extremely precise around an effective use of language. And so I said, no, it's not right for us at this time. And that was my first learning about Asian culture and specifically Japanese culture. Jason, they telephoned me once a month for over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they just wouldn't go away. And so when I sold, I put every cent that I had into LifeSpring when I founded that company. I was the sole funder. And then I didn't want to work in my own company. That's a different story. Right. I woke up to how it was not working for me.
Right.
So I sold my shares to my partners, and for nothing down and forever to pay. And the old joke, they took longer than forever to pay. So I was broke. I had a family. I had a mortgage. No job. And the people from Japan called me. And they said, well, we're changing the offer. We want you to come for 3 months, set up a program, and then you can leave. And we'll pay you for 1 year.
You took that.
I took that. And much later, when we had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of graduates, people would say, oh, you had this vision. That's why you came. That's why you brought experiential learning to Asia. The answer is no. I needed a job. I needed some income to support my family. I do believe that God or universe or whatever was working some magic behind the scenes. I've come to believe that. And so that's how I ended up in Japan. I went for 3 months. I stayed 12 years the first time. So we had training centers in 7 cities throughout Japan. And 2 in Taiwan, 1 in Hong Kong, 1 in Guangzhou on the mainland in China, 1 in Manila. We had an ill-fated one in Korea that didn't work out very well, and I lost a lot of money there. And Sydney, Australia. And then when I returned to the U.S., we set up a corporate culture change company in Colorado.
Right.
So that's how then I went back when the Japanese economy nosedived and we started losing a lot of money. I went back for a year to do a turnaround and rebuild the company. When we expanded into Southeast Asia, I moved to Hong Kong for a year, just to be on the scene and expanding our business. And then more recently, I finally listened to a lot of people asking me to come back. And I realized my children were grown and I'm single. I can do anything I want. So I've spent 6 years from 2015 until 2020 in China. So that's kind of how I ended up there. And also in building the company, I mean, ARC International at our zenith had 240 full-time staff, including 70 full-time trainers of this kind of work, and 15 training centers around Asia. So I didn't do any trainings. I just trained trainers, and I became the back of the room guy that nobody knew about, and
Wow.
which is what was working for me. But concurrent with publishing my book, I found out something. If you publish a book and you don't get out and talk about it, you're going to have a garage full of books.
And you know what? I have a book that's coming out this summer. It's called The Expansion of Consciousness, Infinite Abilities We Possess from Within. Great advice for me, because I'm going to have to try to figure out how to get out there and push it.
People want to meet you. And the other thing I learned about executive coaching or training is that people don't want to do that with a company. They want to do it with a person.
Yes.
They want to know the person behind it. If you think about my friend Tony Robbins, everybody knows that name, or Robbins International. Dale
Isn't
Carnegie.
he charging $1 million a client?
Well, that's part of his deal. I mean,
I
he
love
starts
Tony.
out.
I love Tony Robbins. Yeah, man.
He starts out, with a $20 book, and with the right prospects, he gets up to that $1 million prospect. So
Wow.
He's done incredibly well. And his CEO that actually built the business is a graduate of my leadership training. So I've had a lot of interaction with Tony and with Sam Georges, the former CEO for 22 years. So concurrent with the book, I went back into the training room, and which was a place I didn't really enjoy. That, it was okay. It was not like agony or something, but it didn't turn me on. What turned me on was being in the back of the room, and to know that the structures and systems that I set up put those butts in seats and trained that trainer, and that I can be behind the scenes. And also that's consistent with being a severe introvert, which I am. So according to all the tests, but also according just looking at my own experience of my own life. I mean, I'm the guy that can be up in front of thousands of people, but at the end of it, I can't wait to go back to my room and watch Romanian soccer on ESPN2 and order room service alone, So what worked for me is that in 2014, a friend of mine called me, a former employee, a trainer. He had been doing trainings in Kazakhstan. Now, I don't know about you, but I had to go to Google to find out where Kazakhstan is.
Yes.
Right. I really didn't know. I mean, did I know within 1/3 of the world where it was? Yes. But he had been banned there. He couldn't get a visa after doing a number of trainings, 4 trainings per year. And he had 80 people waiting for him, and he couldn't get a visa. So he said, basically, will you rescue me? I thought, after I looked it up, find out where it is.
Yeah, like, do I really want to go there?
Yeah. And I thought, well, it's interesting. I haven't been there, and I haven't been to that part of the world. And so I'll go. And secretly, Jason, I thought, I wonder if I've still got it.
Right.
I hadn't led that training in more than 20 years. And I wonder if I could do it, And I had this incredible experience. And then they signed me up for 5 more trainings. And so I went there many times. And then that led to my going back to China. So kind of a little complicated story, but and in China, I mean, I did a lot of public speaking, over 100,000 people in front of them, and I learned a lot from that. But also, I did these high impact 4 or 5 day programs with an interpreter with over 20,000 people. So incredible experience. I mean, and I got to see China, very rich culture, very deep. I've never seen a people as interested in their history, as the Chinese.
Wow.
What? And
go ahead.
Oh, so I had fun also.
Wow. Well, let's do this. Let's look at Extraordinary People's website. And obviously, you're an executive coach, one of the top coaches to ever do it, and still coaching. Tell us about what the audience can expect when they come to your website.
Well, this is like throwing a curveball at you, Jason, but could you pull up therobertwhite.com?
Okay.
That's my new website. And
there we go.
Yeah, and it comes from me asking the question of a lot of my clients, what do they get from me? Or, what, one of the great Zen sayings is that fish don't describe water very well. So it's therobertwhite.com.
TheRobertWhite.com.
Yes.
There we go.
And there he is.
There he is, the mentor, the man. But let's talk about what can the audience expect when they come here, and what are we offering?
Well, first of all, they get a little sense of me and what I do, and I am an interruption. I interrupt people's attitudes, habits, and behaviors.
I love that. I love that right there.
And it's more of that holding the mirror up, because like you said earlier, people have all the answers. They also have beliefs that get in the way of even knowing their own answers, and I can help with that. But up at the top there, it says resources, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And if you click on that, you'll find my book. And then if you scroll down a bit, you'll find a couple of free offers that I encourage people to take advantage of, because it puts us into a relationship. Oh, and that's my Nightingale Conant 8.5 hours of audio. That's won a bunch of awards, and a lot of people have found value from it.
Wow.
It's that plus a 55-page manual. So
great.
But below that, even further, are a couple of offers that are free. One is to sign up for my weekly e-zine. It's called An Extraordinary Minute, and it's an idea or a quote from a book or from a video or from somewhere, and then my comments on it, all designed to be read in 1 minute or less. So it's like a little intellectual / emotional snack once a week. And I've been doing that for 12 years, and several thousand people subscribe to it. All you need to do is put your email address in. If it becomes clutter to your inbox, then unsubscribe.
Right.
No harm, no foul. But what's included with that is a 28-page essay on success. So this is the that first part of your coaching, the practical thing. It's based around this thing that I've created called the 8 Principles. And the first one, by the way, you've already mentioned: become clear about what you want.
Yes.
And so but there's a self-assessment in that 28-page thing. I usually don't suggest to people to print things out. I'm trying to be environmentally responsible, but that's one good one to print out, because you can do the assessment on yourself. And
Wow.
it's subjective. It's you evaluating you, but it's done in a way that I think is relatively clever and useful. So,
Robert, your book, Living an Extraordinary Life, contains a very bold, so how does the average person go from ordinary to extraordinary?
well, I have a belief about that and a lot of experience to support my belief. That doesn't make it true, but it does have some experience behind it. If you attempt to get better gradually, you have a gigantic enemy in the way of you accomplishing that. And that enemy is you. All human beings resist change.
Yes.
So if you want to get 10% better at something, well, you're going to have 15 or 20% resistance to it. And people wonder why. Well, why do I keep doing the same thing and getting terrible results, but I keep doing it? That kind of stuff. And what it is our natural proclivity is to resist change. It's not safe. We have an image we build up, and any kind of change means that we're going to have to let go of at least a part of that image. So our resistance machine really starts operating at high speed the moment that we say we want to change, but subconsciously we don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
And just to piggyback on that, and I'm just thinking about people trying to move towards their vision, but they tend to have problems. Is there a common problem that people have when people face moving towards their vision or towards their goal?
I believe it's a couple of things that I've seen over the years, Jason,
Yes.
and that we do address in our trainings. First one is this resistance to change. It's built in.
Mm-hmm.
And what that's built on top of is our image. Now, we build up this image, and sometimes it's to be, at least when we start doing it, to be more effective or to be liked or to get approval or to look good. So we have this image of who we say we are. So if you take that simple sentence, I am, and complete it, you'll find out a lot about your image. And it's very seldom connected to the authentic you.
Right.
It's rare.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing is resistance to change. It's built on any kind of an attack to our image is resisted strongly. The other thing is the power of our beliefs. And when you ask me a question like that, and any trainer, by the way, I'll make this representation. Anybody that's spent a lot of time in front of a room, we can't talk without a flip chart.
Yeah.
It's like an extension of our hand,
Yes.
It is a felt tip pen and a flip chart. But if you can imagine a big circle and the outer ring of the circle, it's like a cutaway of the human body. So the outer body is our skin, but the outer body is a behavior. It's something you can see. So what is it that drives our behavior? And so below that is our emotional body, our feelings. So there's another layer underneath our physical body, because, if you look at, like I did today, I saw a video of a friend of mine's grandson, tiny, under a year old, and he put on some kind of rock and roll music. The kids started dancing. And we look at stuff like that, we go, oh, how cute. Well, what's the lesson? The lesson is the 1-year-old has better moves than most adults.
Right.
Because no restrictions.
Right.
No beliefs about how he or she looks, right? And so all of that stuff gets programmed into us, and we form beliefs. So underneath our feelings, right, because the most automatic thing about a behavior is we felt something. And again, if you look at that under 5-year-old, if they feel sad, do they show it?
No, not really.
Well, no, they do.
They
They're
do. Oh, yeah.
they're crying. They've got that scowl on
Well,
their
yeah.
face. All
Yes.
right. And then if they're happy, do you know it?
You know when they're happy. You're right.
You
Yes.
sure do. If they're afraid, do you know it? Yep, they show fear instantly. And if they're not sad, oh, if they're angry, do you know it? Oh, you know, they can explode when they're that age, right? And when they don't get what they want or whatever. And so what we all get socialized. So what socialized means is, yeah, we can exist better in the world, we can get more approval.
Right.
But what it does is it robs us of our ability to express our feelings. So my coach, and it's confusing to people because his name is Robert Wright, Wright. Of all the coaches I could choose in the world, I choose one where people get really confused when I tell them his name. He says his studies say that we are all illiterate in at least one of those four major feelings: mad, sad, glad, and afraid. Now, in my case, it was anger, mad. I was illiterate because when I was growing up, if you expressed anger, you got hit repeatedly. So what do you learn? Don't get angry, even when you should be angry. So you lose the ability to express one of the four major feelings: anger, sadness, fear, and joy. And if we did a survey with your audience, and I'm going to ask them to do it right now, that's it. What of those four main feelings, anger, sadness, joy, or fear, which is the one you have the most difficulty expressing? And everybody has one, in my experience. All right. So that's a place to do some work. And yet we're going to resist change. You know, if you say to people, which one are you literate in? And they say anger, you say, okay, tell me something you're angry about. Well, I don't know. I'm not really angry. I'm not an angry person. You know, all that stuff.
Right.
They are illiterate about expressing anger, and then they make themselves right about it. Now, I'm saying this because that was me, by the way, that was illiterate about expressing anger. But under that is our belief system. And we have beliefs about everything. It's the shorthand so that we don't have to stop and think about what we believe about things. We have a system. And I don't like mechanical metaphors, but the best one really is the computer. You know, we have programs, but under that is an operating system. And we all have an operating system. So there are people that have very strong beliefs about politics. It's tearing our country apart right now. Or strong beliefs about money, strong beliefs about relationships, about the opposite sex, about the color of another person. You know, we've all got these beliefs. The scientists, the psychologists, the studies that have been on are overwhelming that most of those beliefs are set in stone by the time we're 8 years old.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Like 90%.
And because the conscious mind takes over at that point. Before that, the subconscious mind is recording and guiding you through up until around 7 years old. And it's guiding everything that you do, and it's formulating the way you will be because of your environment.
Exactly. So if you grow up with an angry, violent mother, you learn to not trust. You learn to not express anger. But you also learn to not express joy.
Yes.
You know, so it's an interesting process. So you've got this set of beliefs you're not particularly conscious of, and yet they run you. The example that I've used several times that I like because it happened to me is that I was in a supermarket one day and I turned around an end cap, and there was a woman with 3 small children under 5. Now, moms should not have to go to the supermarket with 3 small children under 5.
Right.
They don't want to be there, number one. And number two, she's got a job to do, right? She's shopping for the family. Well, the middle child in this deal was, I would guess, about 3.5. And he has lost his temper, and he is knocking stuff off the shelves, and he is screaming, and he is throwing himself on the floor with his little rage attack. And she doesn't know what to do. And she reaches down, she grabs him by the arm, kind of half picks him up and swats him on the butt.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What do you do when you see that? What do you do, Jason?
You know, if I'm in the store and I see that, I just say, you know, poor little kid, you know, because my mom hit me on my butt in the store. So I don't, you know.
Yep. And you develop some kind of a belief about it. And what the most likely answer, I've asked thousands and thousands of people that this question around that example, is you walk away.
Yes.
And, you know, you think something, you know, oh, that was terrible and poor kid. Oh, but I can't do anything about it. So I'm going to go find my, the milk that I came here to buy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Another reaction is to get angry and go over and confront the mom. By the way, that's one of the worst things that can happen.
Yes.
You know, I have 2 children that have special needs, and so I've had a lot of training in that area. I can tell you, don't do it.
Right.
Some people will go over and help pick up the stuff off the floor and say calming things. That works, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? Because that creates a relationship. It cools her off a little bit. The kid gets curious, like, who is this stranger helping pick up the mess I just made? You know, all kinds of good things happen out of that. So anyway, there is no conscious thought in whatever your reaction is, but it's instant. It's instant. You do not think about it. It's the product of a belief system that you've built up about what is right and wrong about her swatting that kid on the butt.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you look at extraordinary leadership, extraordinary personal growth, I believe that you have to confront this resistance to change. You have to do something that's so dramatic and so structured in a positive way that it gets you out of who you think you are and closer to who you really are.
Yes. Absolutely amazing. We've run out of time. We have to get you back because there were so many more questions that I wanted to ask you. I wanted to really dive deep with starting businesses and, you know, what does it mean to be successful in leadership? But we'll get to that because hopefully you're coming back. I know you probably will. But I want to thank you for coming on, just sharing, knowledge, wisdom, for the audience and for people to find out who you are and where you are. Audience, listen, therobertwhite.com, www.therobertwhite.com. Check out Mr. White, executive coach, and learn and experience different ways to learn different things and how to improve your lifestyle. But Robert, it was a pleasure. I want you to hold on for a second. I'm gonna move you to the back office while I wrap this thing up. I got a lot I want to talk to you about. Just hold on 1 second, okay?
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it. Enjoyed being with you.
All right, give me 1 second. Absolutely fantastic. When you get high level coaches like that, executive coaches who have coached more than 1 million people, you listen. I mean, actually, you listen. Working abroad for more than 20 years, a best-selling author, living an extraordinary life. There are things that you can learn. There are ways to expand your consciousness, a number of ways. Becoming the leader that you've always wanted to be for yourself and for your employees. Very, very deep stuff. And I'm so excited that Mr. Robert White, was so kind to join us. But I want to thank you for listening, for subscribing to the expansion of consciousness. We're live Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Just go to YouTube at Expansion of Consciousness, type in at Expansion of Consciousness, and click subscribe. That's how I'm able to continue to bring you this outstanding content and bring you top level professionals like Robert White. But again, I want to thank you for allowing me to be in front of you 3 days a week and sharing information. Without you, there's no me. And I want to leave you with these last 3 words: relax, trust, and discover. Thank you very much, and good night.